Just begin. Just bring attention to your heart. See if you can't just breathe into it. So just taking this moment to acknowledge the expansive nature of the heart. Holds you, holds this room, holds all things. And then just narrowing it down, bringing it back to the world of sensation, physical sensation, and just grounding that awareness. Again, if you find the mind wandering off, I always like to think I just give a little bow to it so it comes back and rest in the world of sensation and the practice of just starting again. Just resting this body, this mind, this heart in this great stillness. Nothing to think. Nothing to be. Holding the body in this stillness. Keeping open the crown of the head, that center of the heart, and this nature, the belly and the ground. The practice is to not wander off, but to affirm, confirm here, this breath, this body. Noting the thoughts as thoughts. When there is identification, there is association, which creates more thinking. Just let it go. There is nothing bigger than being right here. Body, heart, and a clear mind. leaving the crown of the head open. The breath, like a breeze, moves in and out. The torso rises and falls. One sits in the center of the stillness. So for those of you on Zoom, I rang the bell, and I know you can't hear it, but it's all right. I'm telling you, it has happened. So we're going to take a short break here, and then we'll come back and see where we go tonight. Adventure, always. So this householder's retreat is to explore the simple tenets of the fundamentals of Buddhism. Simple. The truth is that all creatures are impermanent. They arise and they pass away. And all things, all things are as such. So, in some ways, the Buddha said if you understand impermanence, you also understand happiness. So, it's that fundamental piece of learning oh, I have to always be letting go. It is a constant thing. And the funny thing about our minds is what do we like to do? Well, we want to grasp things and make it into something. And but here's the truth behind it is that whatever arises will change and pass away. And if you really deeply understand this, uh, you understand the tenets of happiness. Not always easy, because as human beings, we attach ourselves, whether it's families, children, things, relationships, whatever. But all of it is part of a moving picture. And we are that moving picture. So, in some way, if you truly understand this, one of the things I know when in my early practice, I was maybe 22 or something, and I got it. I said, "Oh my God, you know, this is what it is." And I had spent all this time creating an imagination that somehow said there was some permanence in things. And so it was a disappointment and a relief, both. You know, a lot of this practice is based on the fact that you know when we don't understand this, when we don't understand impermanence, we also don't understand the tenets of suffering, unsatisfactoriness, or confusion. And one of the pieces for me is the fact that one of the great teachers that you have and have had is actually the word dukkha, which is impermanence or suffering. Unfortunately, this is how human beings learn, is we have to go through loss to find, um, in a sense, that the happiness of that impermanent truth, you know. And so you've all been practicing this, by the way. This is the fundamental practice. So, uh, unfortunately, also is the fact that this is always, will always, on some level, be there. But you don't necessarily have to suffer. You know, this is one of the also tenets is that somehow if you actually learn to let go, and even though, you know, the body, what a mess. Anyway, you know, I was thinking back every time I think of this, when I had my one of my last surgery, a really large surgery. Uh, um, 5 days, I just was suffering. You know, I just suffered, and and yet at the same time, I understood that part of my mind was not caught in that, but my body was caught in that. You know, and it was it is what it was, and I kept, I remember laying there in bed thinking, I'm going to get out of this, and pretty soon I realized I couldn't get out of it, so I had to get into it, you know, and and what was getting into it was actually, we're such a conglomerate of these old stories and relationships and ideals and whatever, and sometimes we need to get a little suffering to kind of break loose from um, the magnetic attraction. Sort of, excuse the expression here, believing in some happy ending. And it doesn't always work like that. It's not was never meant to be that. And so we have to begin to come to terms with the unsatisfactoriness of different stages of life. And then tonight, I want to expand it on. And first, I have to go to the actually to Hinduism and the Atman. And the Atman is the self that, yes, it can be the ultimate self or little self. But we're going to start with the little self, you know, because that's mostly what we are is little self. And and eventually we will get to a point, if you keep practicing this practice, this lovely practice, that begins to, sometimes I think of it as like, okay, there's the relative world that we live in, which is based on the impermanence and the suffering. And it is generated through um, the delusion of a solid self, you know. And it's great. We get these names, and we kind of attach to them. We get these personalities that we somehow believe is who we are. And so that's relative truth. It's okay. It's not, it's not right or wrong. It's just relative truth. And as we begin to explore a little deeper into the relative truth, we begin to see that there is I like the language of thinning the self out, you know, that we're actually in the process. And all of you are doing this, thinning the self out. And if you thin the self out, one of the results of that is that there is a different dimension to the suffering. So it's not the same suffering. And if you can actually get to a point where there's this capacity to really let go of the solidity of the self, then there is this possibility, and I say only possibility, of thinning the self out, which means that there is less attachment to any of the ideals or forms or thoughts or images that arise. And as we get that, and we begin to see that, and we start this process of, oh, I need to thin myself out. And I think it's one of the great tenets of this practice is that slowly we begin to kind of stretch the rubber band or whatever, you know, and and give ourselves some permission um, to not solidify who we think we are, you know. And unfortunately, our instinct is to solidify who you think you are. And so you walk around in your life with your ideas and your experiences, your hopes and fears, and you solidify that into supposed uh, personality, you know. But from a Buddhist point of view, I'm not so sure, you know, because the personality is based on the solidification, the psychological dimensions of attachment. So we're going around attaching ourselves to all sorts of things, you know. And the practice here is, oh, how can I, this is thinning the self out, can I begin to unravel some of the uh, psychological attachments that we have created? And I have to say, a bunch of those were passed down from our culture and our families, you know. And we have a belief system that says, oh, I know who I am. Not so, you know. But we we have a whole culture going around saying, I know who I am because I know what I want. And interesting, you know. And the truth is, you're only an imagination of what you want. Sometimes you get a little bit of it. It's kind of fun, you know, but it's not a promise. It's just you get a little taste of it and you think, oh, this is what it's about. So I will, you know, pursue it in a more uh, intense way. Well, unfortunately, um, if all things are based on this impermanent truth, and that the solidifying of who I think I am is sort of the basis of suffering, then what are you doing? You know, you're going around just making yourself up into more knots and fears and obsessions, and or are you saying, oh, how am I learning to let go? You know? And all the time there's this incredible possibility of releasing the identity around any experience, you know, any experience, the release of that, any experience. It's a big deal, you know, because here you've been taught, you've been brought up, you know, you have created this solidified personality that is who you think you are. And if you were that, uh, then there would be no, that's a relative self. And that relative self is based on confusion, suffering, and dissatisfaction. Bummer, you know? And yet, okay, so that's part of the truth. But there is also, you know, in that thinning the self out, there's also then the awareness of a bigger truth. And that bigger truth is totally without boundaries. It is a world and a mind that is not caught by things. It is actually simply the ability to see, name, not attach, and rest. So the next moment arrives purely out of nowhere. That's kind of cool. But then again, if we don't get it, we get attached to that one because there's something uh, interesting uh, or our imagination takes it to make it into something. And what we're really trying to do is not do that. We're trying to create a world that is, you know, right now the trees are so phenomenal. You know, it's like I come from my house. I'm driving down the street, and I don't know what that's Sacramento Street or whatever it was. No, um, and there are these trees in bloom that are just, they're the epitome of absolute, you know. And even when the leaves fall off, they're still part of the absolute, but there's something quite phenomenal about that. Now, if you attach yourself to it, you will you will see the arising and the loss, and it's okay. But wonder if you could just be with how it's transforming, because it's how you are. And there's some point in your life where you were in full bloom. Nobody said it would stay forever, but there was a point, just like those trees, where there was full bloom. And then there are these stages that we go through, of um, of going from the concretized or solidified sense of who I think I am to, in some ways it's sort of like Swiss cheese or something. Anyway, it you begin to break into the solidity of it. You become holy is another language to use there. Um, but those holes are necessary because they are not they're not something that concretizes. They're something that gives permission not to create more delusion. You know, and if we aren't creating more delusion, then we are actually uh, leaning towards that absolute. So there's the relative truth and the absolute, and maybe that's our ultimate, whatever word you want to use. But it just simply means that when the separateness is somewhat dissolved, I will say somewhat dissolved, then suddenly there is a panoramic awareness that is holding all things. And in that, there is a deep sense of relaxation, like, oh, I'm okay, it's all okay. And the world is, uh, in a sense, creating itself as it goes along. And my job is simply to note, to name, and to let go over and over again. So suddenly there is all kinds of possibility for the change and for a heart that is holding everything but is not of it, you know. And this is part of, one of the things about Buddhist practice is it's called an art, you know. Why is it called an art? Because, it's not a one thing. It's a functional um, unfolding that's taking in all the different possibilities and changes. And you are the product of that phenomena. So, and you have a choice. You can talk about, oh, my view of it, or you can talk about view, or you can talk about, oh, view arises due to conditions, and I can let go of them. So, and if we keep letting go of them, then the world that was really quite small because that's part of that um, relative reality, is suddenly it expands into a different reality. And that reality is taking in, you know, trees, people, water, uh, the world, in its suffering and its imperfection. And yet it in itself is perfect, you know, and it's perfect. It never was anything else. And yet, due to our preferences, oh, I want it this way, I want it that way, I think it should be like this, then we just create this massive delusion and miss it. And that's the danger here is we miss it. We then are no longer experiencing it. We are, in some sense, we're trying to control or hold it in some way. And that's totally limiting, you know. It is the first identity of limiting. And my suggestion is don't limit yourself. This is limitless, you know. And you can just see right now in this spring marvel, and I hear it's supposed to sprinkle or something soon, which is wonderful, you know. We'll take whatever we can get because it's always that phenomenal truth, you know. And we will adapt, fortunately, you know. But it's a big deal between the kind of relative self and the word absolute's a little much for me, you know. Ultimate sounds better. Ultimate self, you know, it's like, oh, there's the grandiose truth that when I stop cutting it into little pieces with the nature of my attachment in mind, then there is, you could say, there is a wide or broad view that then takes in um, funny word, the magic of being here. But it's true. It's the magic of being here. You know, I love traveling the world and new people, new experiences. Um, and as I see as I get older, I start to, I'm getting more narrow as I go along, you know, and I'm going, oh, this is okay, you know, because within that is this ability to hold the whole, not confine who I think I am, who I think you are, or how these teachings work. It's all limited spheres. And th- that's not what we want. We want something that holds all things. And uh, and yes, there will be discomfort, sometimes terrible discomfort, which we can equate to suffering, but it doesn't have to be suffering. And you will reach a point in these practices where, you know, you will have to learn how to die, you know. And well, what does that mean? Well, it simply means that if you have trained yourself to let go, then there will be a point where there will be an ultimate letting go, you know. And, you know, it's nature. That is a natural phenomena. I don't look forward to it, by the way, but understand, you know, it happens to all of us. No one gets out of this thing, you know. We're all on a trajectory, time limited, you know. But if we can use it properly while we're here, I think that's really, if we're learning anything here, this is what we're learning. You know, oh, I don't have to limit, I don't have to fall for sometimes my fear or my anger or my perception or my, um, my confusion, my suffering. I, you're actually much bigger than that, you know. But those things do force you to confine. But confining is not going to not change who you are, you know. Expanding will change who you are. And this capacity to learn how to let go, you will learn how to change. Not always comfortably, because that's not how this works. And unfortunately, and I guess that's a last piece I really want to say is I still believe that probably the most uh, influential times in my life is when I suffered. Whether it was relationship, whether it was my body, whether it was some idea or some concept I had that, in some sense, they always kind of strangled me a little. And if the suffering forced me to say, oh, wait, there could be more here than meets the experience, you know. And if it actually experienced that, then there, you know, in the expert, the people may say I'm an expert, but I'm not an expert. In the expert, there's very few options. In the beginner's mind, there are all options. And it's really, and I take that really from the Venerable Suzuki Roshi. You know, hey, why not? You don't want to confine yourself. And yet your habit is you do. So, um, so I think at this point I'd like to open it up to maybe questions or answers or something like that, you know? Self and no self? Every self?
This is Jen from the meditation hall, and we'll trade off questions from the hall and questions on Zoom. And we have a question in the hall. Can you start with your name and hold it close?
My name is Diana, and something you said reminded me. I went to India in 1985 on a spiritual pilgrimage, and I experienced something that I had never experienced before, and it was really shocking and enlightening at the same time. And that was, we all got sick, and we got, deli belly, so we were not happy campers at one point. And yet, every day we got up and we went to these temples and these sacred places. And I experienced just this amazing feeling of support in the air itself, even. I closed my eyes and I was transported. But at the same time, my body was not happy. And I realized that my body and what I was feeling were capable of going in two different directions. They were not the same thing. And I've never forgotten that, because I've also had cancer twice. And, I know you can relate to that, John. But what I've learned is I'm not my body. I mean, I really had a deep experience of that in India. And I'm really grateful now. And the last thing I want to say is, I think I learned a measure of surrender to what was happening in my body, and letting that inform my mind. Like, yeah, this isn't the best time in some ways, but it is a great time in others. And I really feel like the times that we're in right now, I have been experiencing things in my body, changes, and discomfort in trying to hold on to the status quo. I mean, I haven't been doing it consciously, but I had a couple of realizations that I am doing it without realizing it. And I'm also realizing that once I let go, we're being supported in these times to change radically because we have to. And we all know what those changes are. And so, I think these teachings are so brilliant and so powerful and simple at the same time. And if we can remember that right now, we're given this is grace. We're given a bonus because I don't think it's ever been so easy to let go and surrender to what's actually happening while the world is crumbling around us. So that's what I'm kind of living right now, but the both and of life.
Great.
Yeah,
You know,
thank you.
first of all, I just want to honor, I spent probably a dozen years between India and Nepal and lived in a lot of different temples and a lot of different teachers. And, it changed me completely, and yet there was still this thing I drag around, I think, or it drags me around. And and it's a great teacher, you know. I wish it wasn't sometimes, but it is what it is. And I'll bring it back to one other thing here as you spoke, is that a big thing for me is this word love, you know, and it's not something confined, and it's not something. Um, it's one of the reasons I have to separate out the words love and metta, because love can be so personal and have uh, these storylines. Metta is just the feeling that holds all things, and how important that is in this process of living and dying, you know. And great opportunity here, huh? So, someone from the virtual reality, uh, you just have to raise your hand and speak up. I can't actually see them from here, so I'm going to rely on.
There's nobody who's raised their hand quite yet. So,
Oh, okay.
oh, here's one. Susan, you can go ahead.
Hi, John. It's lovely to see you.
Likewise.
You said something 2 nights ago. I guess I got two questions. One is you said that you believe everything is conscious.
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little more about that.
Okay.
And the other question was, you just said tonight that the world is perfect.
Yes.
How do we accept all the horrible things happening and still have the world be perfect? So those are two separate questions.
It's a paradox. But I just want to say first, um, this is a magical place that we inhabit. And we are very self-limiting, you know, and I think that doesn't behoove the enormity of the human consciousness, and that all things, I totally believe all things have consciousness, whether it's a rock or a tree and I don't know exactly how that works, but I don't need to know that, you know. What all I need to know is that the energetics of the world I inhabit is always informing me,
Mm.
What I do with it, I don't know. It just informed me, you know. So rocks, trees, sky, sun, moon, they're all part of the show of being here, you know. And we can kind of put a negative spin on it. We can put a positive spin on it. We just put a real spin on it that's like, oh, this is the world I was given.
Mm.
And by the way, you were given this whole thing, you know.
Mm.
And I'm not sure if there's something about earned or not, or karma or whatever. I don't hold any of that. All I hold is I'm here. And that if I can see from the self-judging critical mind, if I can see I'm more than that, then suddenly this is a different world, you know. And I am so sorry. There is so much confusion and suffering. It's funny coming back to the States. I went, you know, I've been here just, you know, a couple days over a month, and this place is insane, you know, from one point of view. You know, it's like, oh, and it saddens me to say that, but it's true, you know. I mean, if love is the answer, uh, we sure missed that boat, you know. I mean, individuals haven't, but the collective is, oh my God. But I'm here, and I'm happy to be here. And I love you guys. You know, it's like I'm fine when I'm away, and I'm fine when I'm here because it's always where it is where I am.
Paul? Coming to Paul with another question.
Yeah, so thank you so much, John. Thank you, Adam, everyone, for this week. It's so special. I'm Paul. Yeah, so do we see these relative selves? There are great ones. There's Pope Francis and John Lennon and Mother Teresa and Martin King. You know, so yeah. And then the big ego in the White House. With a blink of an eye, I can crash the world. So what is this? How does this work? These relative selves and their specialness and no self.
Well, you know, when you talk about Pope Francis or uh, different times of John Lennon, uh, they are the inspiration for us to continue our spiritual journeys towards, and I'm going to just use the word, I like the word, the big, you know, just the big, you know. And so I don't know what to say because I think the humanity, you know, um, I think of World War II, or I think I grew up in Europe, and you know, just after World War II, and so Europe was still in the late 40s was still pretty, you know, it was just recovering from incredible damage, you know. I don't know. I still trust people, even though I think we've done a terrible job. And you know, and I hope that we can at least, you know, the two things I hold most dearly. And it may seem simplistic to you, but it's peace and ease, you know. And if we have peace and we have ease, then there's all kinds of options. But if there's no peace and ease, there's not a lot of option. There is survival. And I'm sorry that some places, I was thinking about Ukraine, where the survival is kind of the necessary identity that is being carried out. Sad, you know, very sad. This as much as I know, Paul. I mean, I have no answer to any of this, and I think we're a bunch of idiots. But no, which is true. You know, it's kind of why, you know, why do that? You know, uh, yeah, human beings. We're quite a gift and quite a pain. Mm, thank you.
All right, John, online here we have an iPhone 3. So if you could
Oh,
unmute yourself
Oh,
and
please,
sorry.
iPhone 3.
I didn't know it
that's
didn't say
okay,
my
just
name.
screen
It's
share.
Merle.
Oh, Merle, okay.
Sorry. I just wanted to first say that I really liked what you said about the suffering. Um, it- y- I I had such a small view, and I don't know how it all works either. I don't really know why I had such a small view. And people tell me it was my upbringing, my conditioning, like the rest of us. But these teachings, not just the suffering, but these teachings, kept reminding me that I was a part of everything and kept reminding me that I wasn't, I wasn't just alone in the self. And so I really liked how, and it's true, even though I still get a lot of anxiety about whether or not my body can withstand some of the stressors that go on in a lifetime. That I still feel like you're right. I'm grateful for the expansive view I have now. And so I just wanted to say that I was grateful for that. And then also that what is it that you do in Thailand? Because I'm moving and I'm gonna really miss the Sangha and I just wanted to hear what do you do there?
Nothing. Really, I mean, I go to the temples. I eat well. Uh, I sleep well. You know, here I don't. It's it's funny. Energetically, this place is wow. And I live in a very poor neighborhood, and so it's all domestics, or sometimes it'd be a bunch of people in a room, 5 people sleeping on the floor, but there's no tension there. And here there's tension because I used to, when I came back from India years ago, somebody asked me, well, what is it that you experience? Overchoice, a culture of overchoice. You know, they don't have, there's no overchoice there. So they kind of live with who they are and how it works. But here we do have choice. And we have, and overchoice is anxiety ridden in some way. You have to choose, you know. And so I don't know, it's a bizarre thing to say, Meryl, but it's there is the tyranny of overchoice. How's that?
It
Uh,
makes sense because I already spend time there and I've been going back and forth and I say to everybody it's 1,000 in population. There is no grocery store there. There's no movie theater. It's simple and I sleep better there. So you made a lot of sense. Thank you.
yes, well, thank you. I also sleep well there. And here there's always an underlying energetic that's strong. And it's wonderful because it makes you question, you know, And there's something good about that, but there's also something not so good about that. It's a kind of a two-way sword. Thank you. We have, I can't see, but I'll say there's time for one more question.
One more question.
My name's Leo. Um, it might be a redundant thing to ask, but I wonder, I get so caught up in the suffering sometimes in mind. I'm going through this whole relationship thing, and it is like,
Wow.
whoa. Um, some of the little tips that I've heard you say this week, one was like, I'm here. I wonder, what is a small thing that you might be able to bestow uh, for us or for me in our day to day when we're,
Well, Leo, one of the
thank you.
wonders, thank you. One of the wonders of this is, I know it sounds silly, but I like stomping my feet, you know? And a lot of that is because when I get into something, I get out of my body. You know, I get into a story, I get into some past experience or some desire for a future experience, and I have to bring it back. You know, so sometimes stomping your feet um, is helpful because it really it's that turning the attention to the moment and the body. You know, which by the way, the body is a great teacher. One of my old gurus, you know, he said, well, you know, one thing about the body, it's always in the present. It's never in the future or the past. So that's if just to get that, it's like, oh, okay. Now I see what I have to do to let go of whatever that is contracting me. You know, story, relationship, desire. You know, all these things are just human emotion. So that's one thing, and uh, and that's a simplistic one, but it's really important one. And the other one is love. You know, I think so much of what we do is about comparison. And what is it that comparison is missing? You know, love. You know, we're all here together and we're all going to die. And no one, you don't really own anything. It's all borrowed, you know? And so, uh, why, why, why cause problems? You know, and I think that's where I'm at is why cause problems? You know, it doesn't need to be problems. And yet, you know, I mean, I've been through 2 divorces. I've had cancer twice. There are complications. Okay, I agree with that. And difficulty in relationships and the rest of it. But ultimately, you know, can you just let that's the past, what's here, and it's not tomorrow. And can I love what's here? And sometimes it's as simple as just, you know, like today, I stopped the car and I went to take a picture of a tree. It was just like, oh, it was so lovely, you know? It was here, you know? So we're right at the bewitching hour. Uh, thank you, Leo. And I first wanted to just say, I love you guys. I know I have to leave and, you know, spend time disappearing, you know, and I understand that. And I hope you do too, and or appreciate it. And but the other truth is, I totally love you guys. You know, I mean, to me, you know, I've been in this for almost 60 years. You know, and Sangha to me has been the most rewarding truth of this practice, you know, because you're not separate from it. You're always within it, you know. And we come here to, in a sense, to be touched by it. You know, when you sit, and I'm not joking about the crown of the head, is that, you know, um, when the crown opens, the heart opens too. It's like you can't separate this stuff out, you know. And and I believe in you, you know. Sometimes I used to think, oh, you're not doing enough for the world, you know. And I realize to be with peace and ease will help set the world. And maybe it's just one person, you know. Maybe it's just saying hello in the grocery store, or you know, having a bad experience or bad thought and not doing anything with it. You know, this is not, this ain't brain science. It's heart science. You know, and so let's just take a moment. I want to do a little metta with you for the grand finale of at least tonight. So just bring your attention to your heart. And even if it's contracted, it's okay. Or even if it's just you can't get in touch, it's okay. You're just aiming towards it. And understanding that it itself is not different than awakening. It holds all things. So this is a big, big heart that holds all things. And when you hold all things, then all separation was untrue. And one first cares with oneself. You are the most precious being right now. And if you can hold that of yourself, then you can hold all others. And if you can hold all others, you can hold all things. So all things are held in this great, vast, open heart. May whatever merit that is accumulated through our gathering together like this, may it be shared with beings first everywhere, but individually. Maybe, you know, at the store or in your house or somewhere. Share. And know ultimately, with a good heart, you are everything.